August 1936, the first tenants began to move into the first public housing project in the United States. In an area not far from Georgia Tech, Techwood homes were being filled with new tenants being promised low-rent property with better living conditions. The buildings of these temporary homes would help to eliminate the strain of what the Great Depression left behind, as it would allow thousands to be able to afford a place to stay while the nation got back on their feet. Techwood homes will be built on top of Tanya Bottom, a slum with shantytown homes that resemble more of a third world country than the U.S. that we know of today. These flats were filled with impoverished black and white American families long before the Great Depression. They endured overcrowded, unsafe, and unsanitary housing conditions that led to disease and death all throughout. High crime was also a major problem in these flats. Tanya Bottom was seen as unsightly to an American real estate agent by the name of Charles F. Palmer, who drove through Techwood flats on his journey to work every day. It was a vision for Palmer to one day see the slum area near Georgia Tech's beauty just as beautiful, and rid of the crowded, dilapidated dwellings, ragged, dirty children, and reeking outhouses that he would try to speed past on his way to work. Learning of the limited dividend housing project created under the administration of U.S. President Herbert Hoover, Palmer organized a group of Atlanteans concerned about poor living conditions in the city. Together, believing that the federal government could give the poor of Atlanta a decent place to live while reducing crime and disease, they wrote a proposal requesting $2.3 million, which values close to $52 million today, in federal funding for slum clearance and housing construction. In addition, Palmer's building in downtown Atlanta represented the largest block of privately held commercial real estate in the South. Improving the area would boost its property values and promote further business expansion. In October of 1933, Washington approved he and his team's request. Tanya Bottom was cleared for construction and the site was purchased, while Black Americans living there were given vouchers. 15 months later, President Roosevelt visited Techwood and switched on the electricity to dedicate the first public housing project.
It gives me a certain satisfaction to be able to inform you and through you the nation that 2 days ago, by actual figures, there were 3,125,000 persons at work on a great variety of useful projects in every state in the Union.
Techwood Homes, which was sandwiched between the Coca-Cola Company's headquarters and the Georgia Institute of Technology's campus, would include heat, electricity, and water, and the units had the latest electric appliances, as well as closets in each room, 2-story row houses and 3-story garden apartments would cover less than 1/4 of the 22-acre grounds. On the remaining property, residents enjoyed lush landscaping, playgrounds, park benches, and open space, and they had easy access to an administration building, 6 stores, recreational facilities, and a health clinic. Techwood Homes was a far cry from the shanties that sat there before, and it became a source of pride for the new residents, as well as the model studied and observed by sociologists, home experts, and architects. While Techwood Homes did provide affordable, clean, modern living for 604 white families, housing the likes of S. Truett Cafferty, founder of Chick-fil-A, and Cecil B. Day, founder of the Days Inn, and their families for some time, its construction also meant the displacement of 1,611 families. 28% of Tanya Bottom's community had been African American, and because public housing was segregated by national policy, only white residents were permitted in Techwood homes. The other downside was that many former inhabitants, white and black, were too poor for public housing. In the end, the construction for Techwood homes demolished 9 blocks of African American slum housing to house over 600 white families. If you would like to know more about where some of the black residents of Techwood Flats found housing, check out our video on University Homes. As time passed and the city of Atlanta began to change both economically and racially, in part due to the Civil Rights Movement, integration slowly changed Techwood homes from an all-white housing project to 50% black by the 1970s. More whites moving out as blacks moved in, and crime would elevate as the drug epidemic and gangs would ravage the poor. The CEO of Coca-Cola, Paul Austin, would propose for another clearing of Techwood and dispersing of its residents to the outskirts of Atlanta in 1974, as he feared that crime would rise more as Techwood homes became all black. This proposal was shelved by Atlanta's first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, as he feared the backlash that would come from the black community if this was approved. Instead, Jackson garners federal money throughout his tenure to renovate the Techwood structures, but this did little to stave off the drug epidemic that plagued the public housing community in the 1980s. Drug organizations like the Miami Boys will begin to commandeer surrounding project homes, especially Techwood homes, slinging mass amounts of cocaine and committing heinous crimes, including murder during the mid-80s and early 90s. By then, Atlanta officials were unable to combat the chronic drug trafficking and gang violence at Techwood. The government would then come to see Techwood homes and other projects like it as a loss of income and a major failure.
The International Olympic Committee has awarded the 1996 Olympic Games to the city of Atlanta.
Selected to hold the 1996 Summer Olympics, and the city was excited about what kind of publicity this would bring to the city. Except, there was an issue that needed to be handled before the Olympics set forth. The eyesore and degradation that was Techwood homes. Residents, city officials, and HUD lamented that such homes should be torn down and rebuilt. HUD labeled the Atlanta Housing Authority one of the worst housing authorities in the nation. Residents wanted new housing and worried about a spree of missing children from Techwood and the Miami Boys criminal organization, and the city officials could get no further help from the government to fix construction issues, the drug epidemic, or crime. So in 1992, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development HOPE 6 program began with a mission to revitalize the worst public housing into mixed income developments. Atlanta won the very first grant and the modernization of Techwood was underway, except the plan wasn't to revitalize what was already there. The plan was to replace it all over again. In 1994, the residents were issued vouchers and told to move out once again as Techwood homes were demolished, displacing close to 1,000 black families, of which only 300 units remained to be filled by low-income residents once it was replaced. Centennial Place is the new and most modern development that stands in place of Techwood homes right now. On the grounds, which were once the slums of Tanya Bottom, crimes are still high, as they were ever, even though these homes are mixed income communities. So what does this say about the production and reconstruction of...
That crazy, y'all. Chill with me for a minute. Kick it with me for a minute.
I feel like the new generation don't know the old Atlanta. They really don't know it like that. They may have heard from it, like from some of their homeboys, the old OGs in the hood, big homies of the hood, you know what I'm saying, or their uncles and fathers, but they don't really know, you know what I'm saying. I was a young nigga looking up to all the OGs back then, you know what I'm saying, like I'm one of the guys, like to the young generation, I'll be OG right now, you know what I'm saying, like I'll be a big homie right now, you know what I'm saying, and I grew up in that old Atlanta. But one of the reasons I decided to even make this documentary on that is to clear some misunderstandings, man, and shed some light from how I seen it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this ain't a documentary about me. I felt like I know enough, I seen enough to be able to cover, you know, a lot about the hoods, a lot about the projects, you know, in the early 90s and in the 80s. And see, this is another thing, man. It's like, I don't see enough, like, on social media or YouTube, you know what I'm saying, all the video channels, video sites or whatever, where, you know, you got guys, you know, the OGs or dudes that call themselves big homies, you know what I'm saying, you don't hear them really talking about, you know, how the real Atlanta was, how the old Atlanta really was, you know what I'm saying, so, you know, that could be lost in history, man. You know what I'm saying, if don't nobody cover it. And I ain't just saying like this is my responsibility. I just chose to do it, you know what I'm saying? And reason being because I'm around a lot of young guys, man, you know what I'm saying, doing this music and they don't really be knowing, man. They don't heard stories and they still don't even know. Like, it's like a lot of details and a lot of the details haven't been given to them, you know what I'm saying? They just only know about the crack era and they heard somewhat of the projects, you know what I'm saying? It, like when they was growing up, like the projects was been torn down, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like the only thing that really been covered in fine detail, man, would be Freaknik, cause Freaknik was big, and when the Olympics came to Atlanta, it was big, you know what I'm saying? They covered it well, but what they didn't know is, man, it was real out here in the streets, man. Like it was real, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's hard for people outside of Atlanta to see any real street shit happening in Atlanta when all they ever seen was Freaknik and the Olympics and they never really covered the hoods, man. They never, listen, man, I've been all over Atlanta, bro. I've been everywhere from Atlanta to Decatur. I spent most of my time on the east in the East Atlanta, man, Zone 6, Decatur area. I spent most of my growing up there. But in my early years, man, I all through Atlanta, man. We started at Kimberly Court Apartments, man, and they gone. We started in Eagle Home Apartments, and they gone. But man, I can say this: I seen a lot of killing and a lot of drug dealing, man, and we ain't had too many gangs like that. We had very few gangs. The biggest gang that I think I can remember when I was young was D4L, man, Down by Law, man. And that was like in East Lake Meadow.
That guy shot him and he fell dead right before my face.
The 650-unit housing project was never great, but when drugs took over and gangs claimed turf, it went from bad to horrible in a hurry.
They would shoot and cut and stab and kill each other. That's what they did.
By 1995, the crime rate was 18 times the national average.
Man, so that was in East Atlanta, but I ain't see too many gangs. Like, we ain't really like run like that. Was more a hood thing, it's its own thing. You know what I'm saying? Well, neighborhood might go against other neighborhoods and shit like that. And I seen niggas getting killed regularly, man. Gunplay regularly, man. Gambling regularly. Drugs regularly. Pimping and horn regularly. All the things that I know going on that's being covered in other states and cities, like Chicago and Detroit and New York and all these places like that. But it was never covered like that about Atlanta. And see, the cold thing is, you know, you got what you may say the new Atlanta, and not to be downplaying the new Atlanta, man. I mean, it is what it is, and it's like over time, you know, you got certain communities, man, in which like I told you, it was projects here. Well, we had projects everywhere, man, and once they start tearing them down, man, and start building new communities where a lot of white people start moving in, rich people start moving in, like middle class people start moving in and start pushing the blacks out. And along with that, you know, you had a lot of, you know, homosexuals moving in, man. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just being real, man. You know what I'm saying? We only got very few hoods that still exist to this day. Everything been changed, you know what I'm saying? So this is what the people see, man. This is what the outside people only see. They only see that. They only know. Can't nobody come from another state and city, come down here and visit Techwood, you know what I'm saying, Bankhead Court, you know what I'm saying, Bourne Home, you know what I mean, like I said, Egan Home, Kimberly Court, all these projects that I knew of, you know what I'm saying, the Vikings off Glenwood, none of that exists at this point. So what they will come and see if they visit those areas is, you know, it's gonna be a lot of white people that exist there, or homosexuals, and I ain't got nothing against homosexuals. I'm just telling you what exists. So the thing is, it puts a stigma on the city as being like, you know, this is what this is. A lot of gays there. It's a lot of this and that, and at the end of the day, it's, you know, they don't understand. It's some real street niggas, real thorough, solid niggas that exist still in the city. It's just in certain areas, you know what I'm saying, that may still exist, you know what I'm saying, but they there, and it's and they real, you know what I'm saying. But when I was growing up, shit, the whole west side of Atlanta was all black, and it was all gutter, it was all hood, it was all that street shit right there, you know what I'm saying. And when you hit the east side, man, you had like East Hampton, you had like you know, certain boroughs like Line Street on the way to Austin Drive. You know, the certain parts of Glenwood, all that shit was like real street and gutter. All you seen was the street shit that you see in Chicago, the street shit that you see in New Orleans. You seen the shit here in Atlanta. It was going on in Atlanta. When I grew up as a young guy, man, like my memories are clear. You know what I'm saying? Everything is vivid. Like I remember almost everything, man. And the very first projects that we stayed in that I can remember was Egan Home Apartments. And my grandmother stayed in Kimberly Court, and my aunties and uncles and cousins and all them stayed in East Lake Meadows. So we should go to all, you know, those three different projects often, and that's why I got my upbringing. And I remember in Egan Home Apartments, man, at East Lake Meadows, it was like, the apartment was like all brick, man, like solid brick apartments, man. You know what I'm saying? It was, used to hold the heat. It was hot as fuck in those apartments. I remember we used to have they didn't do too good with cleaning up the projects. You know what I'm saying? Or keeping the maintenance on the projects. So we didn't really have too much ventilation or air conditioning and nothing like that. So we used to have these big ass fans and shit. Everybody used to have them in their windows and shit. Like everybody had them in their motherfucking windows and shit. And that would blow the, you know, take some of the heat out of the apartments, man, cool it off. I remember that shit, man. And mind you, we ain't had the internet and all that shit back then in those times, man. You know what I'm saying? So we stayed outside. The kids and shit stayed outside, man. Like we stayed outside playing and shit, you know what I'm saying? Playing ball and hide go seek and all that shit that kids do. We used to be outside a lot. You know what I'm saying? So being outside a lot, you see a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? That going on, man. You couldn't do that but see the shit. You know what I'm saying? Like if motherfuckers selling drugs, it's obvious. You know what I'm saying? You know who the drug dealers was because shit, they the ones that appear to have the money. They the ones that had the money. They the one that had the cars. They the one that had the jewelry, the clothes and shit. So you seen that shit. And And I looked up to that shit, you know what I'm saying? That's all we had to look up to, you know what I'm saying? Those were like our mentors and shit because that's all we had. But I remember seeing a lot of that shit, man, you know what I'm saying? What I do remember as well, man, is like, we had the big ass porches and shit and generators that used to be outside in the projects and shit, man. And there wasn't no grass. Like, wasn't no grass, it was all dirt, man. Like, it was like all dirt, nigga. They wasn't doing no maintenance on the yards and gardening and shit. Like, that was all motherfucking dirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, just dirt and brick. Like, that was the problem, dirt and brick and shit. Like, I remember that shit, and we used to play in this shit all the time. And, we used to see the fiends, man, like, you know, those that was doing the drugs, the heroin and crack, you know what I'm saying? Really mostly crack, man. I ain't know much about heroin like that, you know what I'm saying? And that probably what they was doing when I seen them shooting it up. It was probably the heroin shit, but I ain't know no better. All I knew about was crack, you know what I'm saying? Because that what was popular, you know what I'm saying? That nigga selling crack or a crack dealer, you know what I'm saying? It was popular in those times, but you see the fiends everywhere, you know, out in public, like smoking, you know what I'm saying? Or they might be ducked off in the cuts and shit. Cause we used to have like little breezeways and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And we had to go through the little cuts and little breezeway, little shortcuts and shit, and you'll see them smoking and shit. And it was so normal, like it ain't like nothing that had you like scared or amazed or some shit. You already knew what it was doing. And I think the time that I kind of really paid attention to that, you know what I'm saying, in fine detail is when I see my auntie doing that shit, man. My auntie was smoking that shit, and I seen it, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, damn. I was like, okay, if you ain't selling drugs, then you own the drugs, you know what I'm saying? And it was like, that was it. You own the drug, or you selling the drugs. And I already knew then I was gonna make a decision in my mind about my life because I paid attention. I had a bit of intelligence, so I kind of knew what was going on. I knew the ones that was selling the shit, the ones that was, you know, prospering or whatever, or whatever you may say. You know what I'm saying? Because they looked like they had it. They was having. You know what I'm saying? And the one that was on the shit was looking bad. You know what I'm saying? They were like losing. You see what I'm saying? So I already knew I ain't gonna be on this shit. I ain't smoking shit. You know what I'm saying? If I'm gonna do anything, I'm gonna sell the shit. You know what I'm saying? So and unfortunately for us in those times, it was building in us a desire to want to be drug dealers. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a good thing. That, you know, of course, that's a bad thing, but that's what was going on in those times because the drug dealers had all the popularity in the projects. They're just like in other states, you know what I'm saying, where that's going on or what's going on real heavy. It's like, you know, you can go on the internet and you can see a lot of stories being covered, a lot of big drug dealers and just like Alpo, Frank Lucas, and many more that's it throughout the country. And, you know, Freeway Rick Ross, you know what I'm saying? Like guys like that was in on the West Coast, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, all I knew when growing up, you know, it was a few names in our city that was big, and the name that I remember was Terry White. Like, that's the name I used to hear all the time growing up. But Terry White got the money, he got the dope. He was this big time dude, he had millions and all that. Like, I didn't know nothing about all these other guys until now. Like YouTube, you know, you go on some shit and you hear about Alpo them and all that. Like, I ain't know nothing about that. We knew about Terry White. We knew about the dude from Atlanta that had it, you know what I'm saying? And there was a few other guys, but Terry White is the name that I remember the most. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that was our thing in Atlanta, man. You know what I'm saying? And the drug game was heavy. I remember it was, you know, being in the projects, man, when I was in my teenage years. And, you know, those years when you want to start trying to get out and be grown and start making some money. Because, like I said, we was poor, so I had to kind of make some changes in the home, you know what I'm saying, to do something for myself. So, of course, I did what I knew to do, and that's to get out and learn that game right there and get into that game. But when I first ventured out into that game, it was a bunch of drug dealers. Like, it wasn't a few drug dealers or one guy had the block sold up. Or if it was one or two guys that really had it was about 100 guys in the project that was serving them. and they may be getting these supply from maybe 1 or 2 guys, some shit like that. But it was a bunch of young niggas